So it's been a while since we made a video like this going over what are the best settings to use inside Warzone. There's been a lot of new maps, a lot of map changes to existing maps as well, and especially when it comes to overall world lighting inside the game, it's actually improved tremendously. So we're going to go over what are the best settings to use inside Warzone inside Season 4. If you do enjoy this style of content, don't forget to subscribe as we try to reach our goal of 50k. Click that link and subscribe to our second channel. So we're going to go through pretty much every setting that we do have here. The only thing we're not going to cover is mouse and keyboard because we don't play on mouse and keyboard, unfortunately. So even though this is PC settings, some of this will still apply to console as well. I do want to point that out. So let's get straight into it. So when it comes to display settings, first of all, so obviously you want full screen. This is mainly for PC people, obviously. You want display monitor to be the monitor you're actually playing on. Display adapter should be the graphics card you're using. Refresh rate should be whatever the refresh rate of your display can handle, which should be the maximum, preferably. Then when it comes to render resolution, again, it should be the resolution of your monitor. Mine is 1440p. Most people play on 1080p, depending on if you're playing on console or if you're playing on PC. Then when it comes to dynamic resolution, I have this turned off because this changes your resolution in game to match a set frame rate. You don't really want that. You want the frame rate to change to match your resolution. So it's kind of like the opposite way around. It's kind of weird. Dynamic resolution frame rate target. Obviously, this is what it'd be set to. You don't want to use that, obviously. Aspect ratio is going to be automatic, or you could choose whatever your aspect ratio is. Usually it's 16:9, but you get ultra wide monitors as well now. Sync every frame. Now you can use VSync if you get a lot of screen tearing, but if you don't and your monitor keeps up with the frames, then you don't really need to enable this. Custom frame rate limit, I just like to set a little bit above what I get in game. So usually I get about 120 frames in game, so I've set this 160. I could set it a little bit lower than that. And then when it comes to menu frame rate, you want to keep this quite low. You don't really need the frames to be all the way in 120 inside the menus. Then when it comes to brightness, 65 is a kind of perfect spot for me. I think 65 has been very, very good from every single map that gets played in this game now, especially now that we've got changes to Rebirth. That's still in the game. We've got Caldera. We've also got the new Fortune's Keep map. Obviously, lighting is going to be slightly different on all of those. Display gamma I have set to default. NVIDIA highlights I've disabled, I record separately. Reflex low latency, people use enabled plus boost, people use enabled. I don't really see if it makes a huge difference, but you can go for either enabled or enabled plus boost. Anything that will help latency in this game is going to be a bonus, so choose whatever you want here. That's going to be personal preference. Now when it comes to actual quality, if you've got FOV, obviously I know it's only on PC at the moment, then you want to whack this up as high as possible, preferably, and that is what I play on, and I do play on affected as well. And this is going to make sure that your FOV stays intact when you're ADS'd. Some people like to have it independent so that you can zoom in more. So it's just going to come down to personal preference here. If you're on console, unfortunately, you're stuck on that 80 FOV. Camera movement though, you want to turn this down to the least possible camera movement. You don't want it shaking all over the place for no reason, so you're going to get visual recoil on your gun anyway, so you don't really need all this extra stuff. Streaming quality I have set to low. You can set it to normal as well. Both are pretty decent. I don't think it really matters too much. Texture resolution, low is good enough in my opinion, especially if you're trying to keep it very competitive, keep the frame rate up. If you're trying to take like thumbnails, screenshots, anything like that, then you can whack this up, but if you're actually trying to play in game and try and get the best performance, then this should be on low. Now very low looks ugly, to be honest. You can't really make out details if you try to complete any kind of Easter eggs and stuff like that, so just kind of keep that in mind. Texture filter anisotropic I have set to normal. Works perfectly fine for me. Particle quality is low. Bullet impacts and sprays is enabled. This is so I can see recoil patterns when we're doing testing, but also to see if enemies are nearby as well. Tessellation I have set to all. I think this just works out fine. I've tried playing around with this setting quite a bit, and it just kind of makes a lot of the edges look jaggy if you have it set to anything else. Dismemberment effects I've turned off, but I've only done this for kind of visual, the visual aspect of the game, just so that there's not a lot of gore flying around. I might miss something else. Especially when there's like the birds in the game as well. Wish I could disable that too, because you see a lot of birds flying around and you might think as a player that's actually flying in from the sky, but it's not. Just weird things like that I think kind of throw you off the game, so that's why I've turned this off. On-demand texture streaming, you want to turn this off. This uses your internet to kind of stream extra textures and things like that, which you don't really need, especially if your internet's not very good in the first place. Now we've got filmic strength. This is all console stuff, so you definitely want to make sure this is all turned down. So turn down to 0 for filmic strength. Film grain wants to be turned down as well. You don't need DLSS. It's not a campaign game. You're not going to be playing in 4 or 8K for the most part anyway, unless you're getting maybe like an insanely good graphics card. Anti-aliasing, filmic, SMA 2 times is the best. Depth of field you need off. World motion blur you need off. Weapon motion blur you need off. Shadow map resolution I have set to normal. Cache spot shadows enabled. Sun shadows enabled. Particle lighting is low. You don't really need it all that high. Ray tracing definitely off. It's going to tank your FPS. Ambient occlusion I have set to disabled as well, and then the reflections are disabled also. Now we've got the interface settings, and I do actually want to go over a few things here. I think it's very important actually. So first of all, we've got subtitles. Now, in my opinion, even if you don't usually play with subtitles and you do struggle a bit to hear things going on in the game, I'd actually turn on subtitles. And that is just because when it comes to like characters saying out things and hearing certain things like UAVs or anything like that, if you've missed it, it actually comes up on screen and you can see it that way visually instead. So subtitles can be useful for people who don't even necessarily need it. Personally, I have it disabled. I think it takes up too much screen real estate, could make you miss something on screen, but it's either good on and off. So, I mean, you can use it for sure. I know a lot of people that don't need it, definitely play with it. Colorblind type I have set to Dertinopia, but let's be honest, a lot of the color settings in this game have now been improved with the Caldera update and all the Vanguard changes, and even the Fortune's Keep map looks pretty good as well without any colorblind settings, so you don't necessarily need this, but I still play with it on because I do still think it makes the game look a little bit brighter and a little bit better in terms of color, so definitely go for it if you do like that kind of style of the colors. Then when it comes to colorblind target, I just have it set to world, so this means just anything in gameplay. And then if you have it set to interface, as you can see, it changes slightly the color of the menus as well, but you don't really need it on the menus, easy enough to read. Then when it comes to HUD bounds, this is something I do change a lot, and that is I have it set to 30. Now this is going to push the HUD closer into the screen, meaning that you don't need to move your head a lot to kind of figure out what's on the minimap or how much ammo you've got or any of these things. You'll see it a lot quicker, especially if you've got a bigger monitor, so maybe something like a 27-inch monitor or anything above that, even if you're playing on a TV, for example. Definitely push your HUD in closer. You can even do it even closer than I have done as well. Minimap square, you have to have that. You get more real estate, you can see more, so make sure you do that. Minimap rotation, have that enabled. Show compass, I don't really use the compass all that much. I know a lot of players do use the compass. So you can have this enabled or disabled, it doesn't really matter. Both are good depending on if you use it or not. Most people tend to ping. Kill feed duration I've set to 10 seconds, but you can have the set as high or as low as you want. I don't really know why you'd want to set it so high. Always show vehicle controls I have set to none. But then you can change that if you really need it. I don't really know. If you've played this game for a while, you don't really need it, to be honest. When it comes to audio, it's basically between boost low and boost high. Let's be perfectly honest. It's a 50-50 between those two. I've always played on boost low and I found it works really well. I've changed headsets in that time as well. Still always boost lows work the best for me, but if boost high works for you, then definitely go for that. Master volume 100% as always. Music volume as low as possible because you don't want in-game music. It's going to put you off hearing footsteps, which you don't really need, especially since the game's footstep audio is just still crap. Dialogue audio I've set to 50%, and that is just when your character is saying certain things in the game. Again, this is down to that kind of UAV overhead and all that kind of stuff as well, so make sure if you do have the set down, you need to put subtitles on, or you can just make sure you can still hear all that. Effects volume 100%, this is going to be like hit marker sounds and all that kind of stuff. Cinematic volume definitely all the way down, we don't really need that. Juggernaut music disabled, we don't need that either. Hit marker sounds I've set to Modern Warfare, but you can set it to whatever you want. Mono audio I have set to disabled. Mono mount I have 100%. I haven't really messed with any of these settings here, to be perfectly honest, and then voice chat is personal preference. Now moving on to controller settings here, this is pretty much one of the main settings people are going to probably ask about. So BR button layout I have set to default, but I have got the back button attachment for the PlayStation 4 controller. Stick layout is default as always. Invert look, you do not want to do this on any game unless there's a specific reason for it. Then left stick dead zone is going to be something you'll need to set yourself. What you want to do is you probably put the dead zone all the way down to 0, loading a game of plunder. See if the aim is moving by itself. If it is, then you up the dead zone one by one until the aim stops moving. That's how you work out what your dead zone is. Then we've got left stick, max dead zone input. I've just set this to default. Sensitivity you want pretty much between 5, 6, 7 and maybe 8 as well. I like 6 or 7. It just depends how I'm feeling on the day. I do switch between the two. Now when it comes to custom sensitivity per zoom, you want to have this enabled. Make sure you do have this enabled. It's a very important setting because everything up to a 4x optic is usually going to be an SMG, an assault rifle, LMG, those kind of weapons. And you want to make sure that's set between like a 0.75 and maybe a 0.9. That's kind of the best at giving you a slightly lower sensitivity when you're aiming down sights. Is going to make sure you stay on target, and that's really important, is staying on target once you're aiming down sights. And then on top of that, a 5x optic is kind of like a weird one. There's not really many 5x optics in this game in general. 6x optic and above is usually a sniper. I usually have this set slightly higher than the base sensitivity, and the reason for that is that so when you're swiping across your screen, you get to feel that aim assist on a sniper, and you could take a shot at that point, and it is more exaggerated when your sensitivity is higher. So it's really good that we have this option inside Warzone. Now, when it comes to aim response curve, I have it set to dynamic. Standard's also a really good option as well. But essentially the way standard works is when you're getting closer to your target, it's going to slow down. So it gradually gets slower. Whereas with dynamic, if you're between two targets, it's a lot snappier. So that's why I think dynamic's a little bit better in my opinion. It still slows down close to a target regardless, but when there isn't any targets in sight, it's a lot snappier. So it just means that you can snap from one target to the next very easily. Controller vibration is off. I mean, you don't really need it, let's be perfectly honest. Aim assist I have set to standard. I don't really know any other reason to pick anything else, to be honest, because standard gives you that hip fire as well. If you choose some of the other options, it kind of makes the hip fire aim assist a lot worse. So standard is usually the best option. Scale aim assist with FOV I have set to disabled. I've always played like that, so I don't really feel a need to change it. Weapon mount is set to the standard one, so ADS plus melee. Weapon mount exit is set to enabled. Aim down sight is hold. Steady aim behavior is hold. Equipment behavior is hold. Use and reload behavior is contextual tap, and that is so that you can kind of switch between hold and tap depending on what is more prioritized in that situation. Depleted ammo weapon switch is disabled because sometimes you want SMG out even though it's got no ammo, so you can run about quicker. Armor plate apply all. This is very good, especially to get your movement, make your movement a lot better inside Warzone, because you don't need to hold the triangle button or the Y button. Slide behavior is tap because you need to be able to slide cancel in this game. They might remove it for Warzone 2, but for now you do need it. So auto move forward disabled, no one wants to move forward automatically. Tactical sprint I have set to double tap, but I do have automatic tac sprint available as well, which is more important. So if you do have auto tac sprint enabled, you need to get used to using this, but shotguns are very hard to use with this setting, just keep that in mind. But most people I think use auto tac sprint now, which is good for movement. Vehicle camera recenter I have set to enabled, and then we've got parachute auto deploy disabled. You want to be able to pull your chute whenever you want to, not when the game decides to do it. So there we have it. Those are all the best settings for Warzone Season 4. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe as we try to reach our goal of 50k. Click that link and subscribe to our second channel, and thank you very much for watching.